So in looking at this first slide, we can also consider solar energy that hits our buildings in terms of scales. And I'm going to talk about the deployment of emerging technologies into the built environment. And whether we like it or not, the buildings that we build and our environment in cities are engaging at all of these scales simultaneously, whether we're conscious of them or not. And here at the top is an example of the relationship between the geometry within a form within the human body, all the way down from the nanoscale to the atmospheric scale. And we know that these scales are highly interdependent in terms of performance. They have evolved over the millennia such that the performance of the scale of the cell at the smallest scale is interdependent with the conditions of the atmosphere at the largest scale. In contrast, the way that we're deploying our systems, this is a next generation environmental or solar energy system where the solar cell is actually the size, that little black dot that you can see, the size of a postage stamp rather than the 4x8 sheets that you see in current solar cells. And our goal for these systems is to capture, transfer, and distribute as much of the incoming solar energy that hits the building as possible. Now, what we deploy in order to do these are state-of-the-art technologies that have been developed at single scales independently. They are the result of, at the modern era, these incredible vertical silos of specialized knowledge where information and the development of materials has been a highly controlled process in order to maximize performance of manufacturing in terms of what we can viably produce in products. And so you see that at all of these different scales, we can zoom all the way down to the nanoscale, and we are already designing materials to perform in terms of semiconductor material at that smallest scale. But I will refer to the question of our esteemed colleague, which I think is the fundamental question. Even with a system like this, if we can capture and transfer up to 80% of incoming energy and viably distribute it into energy systems, how are we making these systems? And do they actually resemble performance characteristics of natural energy flows and natural systems? And we would probably say not. And so I would say that there's an incredible moment that we're living at in 2009 where we have an opportunity for the first time not just to conceive of the manipulation of material at these multiple scales in order to produce systems, but we are also being able to cross-pollinate information across these scales, across the specializations, in order to see what kinds of relationships emerge that are potentially much more interdependent in the relationship to natural systems. We have bioclimactic energy flows such as wind and solar are hitting our buildings and our cities in diffuse forms, and we need to learn how to not just capture and transfer them within these scales, these diffuse scales, but also to distribute them in the systems that we have. And so even at the state of the art here, I would say what is limiting us in all of these different scales is our knowledge of materials and our knowledge of how we can manipulate materials at each scale viably for the manufactured products. But our biggest challenge in the future is not just the limitations of materials, but the limitations of our ability to communicate across scales. And so it's a social constraint of information flows and how we can actually tackle that through supercomputing. We saw the example of supercomputing earlier. What will be the information flows and the types of design teams that we have? If we can visualize the criteria for performance across all of these specializations simultaneously, we will have an incredible opportunity to visualize problems in a very different way than the way that we currently do. Which I would say right now we are still firmly embedded within the idea of mechanical and electrical intelligence, but really the emerging world that we just saw probably from biotechnology is closer to our future. And with that, the social constraints, I would hand over to my esteemed colleague because he will talk much more about this issue of communication flows.
Very good, very good. Thank you very much.